Xtalks is the industry leader in connecting life science, food, healthcare, and medical device professionals. The Xtalks Life Science Podcast features insightful conversations with industry experts about all things pharma, biotech, and more.
Hello and welcome to the Xtalks Life Science Podcast. I'm Ayesha, Rashid, Senior Life Science Journalist at Xtalks.com, and this week I am happy to introduce our very special guest on the show today. We have with us Dr. Bill Andriopoulos, who is the Vice President of Medical Affairs at Galderma US. Galderma is a company focused on advancing science-based innovations in the dermatology space. Dr. Andriopoulos joined Galderma about 10 years ago in Canada, following a role in Sweden as Galderma's Global Head of Medical Affairs Aesthetics. He started as Vice President Medical Affairs US in 2021 then. Alongside his team, he leverages the latest in science to support company-wide initiatives to pursue Galderma's collective ambition to becoming a global leader in dermatology. In his current role as Vice President Medical Affairs US, Dr. Andriopoulos leads teams driven to advance dermatology for every skin story, which is the motto or tagline at Galderma. So to learn more about the work that Dr. Andriopoulos is leading in the dynamic space of dermatology at Galderma, let's turn to him now. Thank you so much for being on the show with us today.
Thank you for having me.
So I'd like to start off by asking you a bit about your career journey and how you got involved in the dermatology space, and specifically in atopic dermatitis research, and what ultimately then led you to your current role at Galderma.
Yeah, sure. Thank you. Such a pleasure to be on. Fan of your show. It's an interesting story because I have an absolute love for science. So I started the journey at McGill University in Montreal, where I studied physiology. I was trying to understand how the body works. And I fell in love with a very unique topic at the time, which was iron metabolism. So this molecule, this metal fascinated me so much that it could control the body in being iron overloaded or being anemic, that whole wide spectrum. So I loved it so much that I did my PhD in iron. I continued my research at the Massachusetts General Hospital, where I had a first author Nature paper. And I just absolutely loved the basic science, the preclinical work, but I really wanted to get closer to the clinical translation of science and research to the patients. So at the time, I was made aware of a division, like you mentioned, called medical affairs in pharmaceutical companies, where essentially the scientific and clinical and the research, we're essentially the voice of that to all the key opinion leaders and probably some of the most brilliant minds in the world. And that's where I believed that I belonged in my career. And that was about 15 years ago, as you mentioned, when I started my journey in dermatology. I first started working on a neuromodulator, which again was completely fascinating. And as you said, I worked in Canada, and in Canada really focused on strong educational programs. This led me to globalize these educational programs by moving to Sweden. So I was actually living, as you mentioned, with my family in Sweden for a few years. And there I led medical affairs aesthetics globally. Now, the interesting part of this story is that the at that time, as a company, we were intent on building up and enhancing some of the capabilities and resources within U.S. medical affairs, particularly in the area of biologics, which is an area, as you mentioned, from atopic dermatitis. So from Sweden, moved back to North America into this current role, like you mentioned, Vice President US, to really build up and drive medical affairs in the US for the upcoming launches that we had at the time.
Well, thank you so much for sharing that journey. Definitely taking you across continents and into different spaces, from academia and then to industry, medical affairs. So that's really wonderful, and it's really great for, I think, especially emerging talent in the field who may still be trying to navigate where they might want to find themselves in this space in science and industry, and really bridging that intersection between the two.
I never thought I would go to botulinum toxins and
Sorry,
dermatology I never thought I'd go from iron
from
metabolism
iron
to
to
these
dermatology, right?
very, very different things, but I haven't looked back to the last 15 years in all aspects of skin, which Galderma has been so fortunate to allow that full spectrum of skin.
Right. And so I'd like to learn more about Galderma now in itself, and what really are the core missions and goals of the company.
Yeah, sure. Galderma is very unique in that dermatology is at its heart. It's been our focus since 1981. It's our passion, our commitment to skin health and advancing options for patients has only grown stronger over the years. We build um, innovative science-backed portfolio that covers the full spectrum. So from dermatology to consumer brands to medical solutions to aesthetic solutions. So the full spectrum of dermatology and skin. And what sets us apart is that we're the only large-scale pure play dermatology company that gives us a unique advantage to stay focused. Um, so we can advance the skin health. So, but we're constantly refining and reinforcing our purpose, and that's what drives our integrated dermatology strategy, which fuels our ambition to lead us across all categories. Now, the categories are very interesting. We have an aesthetic business unit, which, if we think about the skin, allows solutions to enhance, restore, relax, even stimulate the skin's own mechanisms for collagen and elastin and other areas. Then we have a whole other area that's well integrated with our consumer business that really looks at the outer layer of skin by cleansing, by treating, by moisturizing, by protecting against the sun. And then finally, we have therapeutic options, options for acne, and then options, as you mentioned, and now for atopic dermatitis and prurigo nodularis. So, how lucky are we to have this full spectrum of skin from the epidermis all the way down, in fact, to the deeper layers of the skin for patients?
Indeed, that sounds like that's definitely full coverage. Dare I say, no pun intended. But that's, yeah, absolutely. I was looking more into the company and reading more about it on the website, and just like it was fascinating to me, again, like how going from aesthetics to the disease states, and to really honing in on the pathology of various conditions, and developing treatments for them. So really kind of a one-stop, wouldn't say shop, but just a one-stop place really where everything dermatology is happening. So that's really.
Yes, it is.
And in terms of, so there are, obviously in the space, many other different types of companies, but I would say Galderma does stand out. So I'd like to hear from you. How does the company differentiate itself in the dermatology field, and particularly in the research and treatment of conditions like atopic dermatitis?
Yeah, thank you. That's Yeah, we're so lucky that we're the only pure play dermatology company. So that allows us to be completely focused on the skin. What sets us apart is that we've had really robust clinical trial programs, particularly in atopic dermatitis, called Arcadia. But what's really differentiating is that we've put a large focus on patient centricity. So, in addition to the itch and the skin, we also look at the psychological burden, but in addition to treating the root cause of itch. I'm sure you know, but patients with atopic dermatitis, they experience a wide range of symptoms. So they have skin lesions, inflamed skin, and recurring itch. But it actually goes beyond this physical burden. They can have effects on mental health, with patients suffering from anxiety, depression, and even sometimes suicidal ideation. In fact, 39, I believe it's 39% of patients reported that the disease caused them to avoid social interaction completely. So there's a whole element that's so important on the psychological burden, and recent developed solutions will help with that to the root cause of AD. The itch, the inflammation, the fibrosis, the skin lesions, but also that patient-centric psychological burden as well.
Indeed, I think that often gets overlooked in a lot of conditions, and especially in dermatological conditions where you just have it's just everything is so visible most of the time, and so
Yeah,
that's a really,
it's really appreciate.
really important aspect to address. And I'm glad that you were able to share that with us, and a company like Galderma is really focused on that as well.
We all
And
get that through like listening. So when we are entering a space and we listen to these patients' stories, they're so impactful in terms of the itch and the lesions, but the psychological burden that it has on these patients is so crucial. And we've listened to countless stories, not only from the patients but from the healthcare providers, and it's so important that it gets tackled. It's really, really impactful.
absolutely. And in terms of, I like to ask you also about really the evolving landscape we talk about in any industry, and specifically in dermatology. I think dermatology has been notorious, I think, for being a very challenging space with a lot of skin conditions being hard to understand in terms of the biology. But of course, we have come a long way. So, how have you seen this space evolve in terms of our understanding of skin conditions at the pathological level, the molecular, cellular level, and treatment wise? And where do you see things heading in terms of trends in the next couple of years?
Yeah. Um, I really believe that it starts with the listening. We actually have the formula. So our intent here in advancing dermatology and the science is that we listen to the skin community, and the skin community of the patients and the healthcare providers and doctors. From listening to them, we innovate. By innovating, we advance the science, and by advancing the science, we provide these solutions. But importantly, we educate. We educate back, and um, right now in dermatology, AD is very important, and especially understanding all aspects of AD. In fact, 200, I believe it's 230 million people worldwide suffer from AD. 7% of the people in the US have AD. 87% of people with AD are seeking freedom from itch. So, in terms of trends, solutions, um, they may improve signs and symptoms of the disease, but many patients don't respond optimally to approved therapies. They don't experience complete itch relief and, importantly, completely clear skin to the same degree. I think what's also important to understand as a trend and the unmet need by listening is that AD may begin at a young age and persist throughout life. It's increasingly being recognized as a relapsing, remitting disease. But in my view, the chronic nature is completely underappreciated. A lot of the times the treatment is reactive. Like you said, it's complex, it's focused on flare control. It doesn't address the long-term disease modification. And having this, if you will, episodic approach can leave patients in a very, very frustrated a cycle of frustration, if you will, with inconsistent care and unmet expectations. So we have to recognize that it's a lifelong disease and shift to a more proactive approach, but also supporting them in transition. So transitioning from pediatric to adult, mild to moderate to severe, and ensuring continuity, which brings me to the next big trend. And we got this a lot from, again, I hate to use it again, but from listening to the field. In recent meetings, the trends that you had discussed, um, we realized that it's very important to have long-term data. So short-term data is very impactful, short-term efficacy, but it doesn't tell the whole story. What happens at 12 months and beyond? What happens in the real world? What happens across diverse populations and comorbidities? And then particularly those psychological aspects integrated into that is very important also. So looking at next generation biologics, some that are targeting, one targeting interleukin 31, but some providing rapid, lasting itch relief with skin healing that lasts will be the new gold standard for patients.
Mhm. Wonderful. And do you see, in terms of new treatments, do you see them as being more so as monotherapies or building on and being used in conjunction with existing therapies? How do you see that aspect of things? And I mean, in the grand scheme of things, it doesn't matter, but like we talk about patient burden as well, do we want patients to be taking more drugs, or, and if it helps them, great, side effects notwithstanding, and all of those considerations. So, what is really the goal in dermatology today, in your perspective?
In my view, I think it has to be very personalized. So we have to understand exactly what the patient has and provide that personalized, precise treatment for them. And if it requires some other elements as well, for sure. But we have to have a really good understanding of what the issue is, and it's complex for sure. But we're making a lot of progress on this field, and um, I think we've been really fortunate to have a lot of insights from really big experts to help us through that journey.
Indeed. And so, what can we expect from Galderma in the coming months, in the coming years? What are some milestones that the company and you're looking forward to?
Oh, we're looking forward to a lot. We're looking forward to so much. Like we discussed, one element is long-term data. So that's something that we're continuing to study in the field of atopic dermatitis, but also in terms of real-world usage, um, and importantly, patient-reported outcomes like quality of life, sleep quality, psychosocial impact, in addition to the skin and the itch. So this is work that's going to continue in this space. And then we have some very interesting innovations across our full spectrums of dermatology. We have solutions in aesthetics. We have solutions in the consumer space that will really revolutionize dermatology in the next short while. A lot of the trials have been completed for these innovations. So
Right.
it's going to be very exciting. Yeah.
That's awesome, and I really do like the fact that the company is very focused on science driven innovations, because often in the, people in the often the dermatology space does get, there's overlap between like the aesthetics and the health and wellness industry as well. However, to have that science backed innovation, I think that's really key and important. So,
In an integrated way
in
also.
an
So,
integrated way, yeah.
a lot of the science that's being produced is really narrow. So let's say I only do an aesthetic study. I only do a study with a cream or, there's, what's beautiful about our company's approach is that we have this integrated um, approach where we actually do, especially post-market studies that integrate different products for skin solutions, again, depending on the specific patient needs, which has become highly personalized. And we invest quite a lot in these different, not only when a product is approved, but to advance the science afterwards as well, in all aspects, from consumer to aesthetics, and obviously with atopic and prurigo nodularis.
Just one more question I had was actually in terms of a company like Galderma, what kinds of partnerships, if any, do you currently have or are pursuing within industry, academia, investors, and it's a whole ecosystem.
Yeah.
And so, who are the important players within that?
Yeah, sure. So we look to partner with academia for a lot of our innovations and is understanding the science, but we really look to partner with those who are very strong on the science, no matter who they are, whether it's an organization, whether it's a key thought leader. And that's important to us. And an example of this are some of our post-market studies that we've done. We've partnered with people who have done research for a very long time, love the science, are invested in dermatology, and look to advance the science. So, like you mentioned, we do look for research, working with academia. Came from academia, passion of mine, and then also though working with some of the most brilliant minds in the world. And it's not only so we do a lot of advancing of the science through the research, but we also do a lot of education across all areas. We feel it's so important that people are educated on the full spectrum of dermatology. In fact, that was the reason I went to Sweden, was to globalize this educational platform that we invest heavily in. Yeah.
Wonderful. I think really it's the education, the discovery that really drives everything, all of the great innovations. And so lifelong learning, I think that's what we learn in academia. And it really seems like that is what is happening at Galderma in terms of really science-driven innovations. And like you said, really the intersection also between the aesthetic space and really integrating all of those aspects. And dermatology is such a unique and exciting space because of that. So Dr. Andriopoulos, thank you so much for your time today. Really, really enjoyed the conversation, and I'm sure our audience did as well.
Thank you so much for having me.
All right, that's the end of this episode of the Xtalks Life Science Podcast. If you liked today's show, don't forget to rate, review, and subscribe. Thank you, everyone, and we will see you next week. Bye for now.
To join the Xtalks community, visit xtalks.com and register for exclusive access to curated content like live webinars, news articles, and educational videos. The views and opinions expressed in this podcast are those of the speakers sharing them and should not be taken as professional advice, nor do they necessarily reflect the policy or position of Honeycomb Worldwide. For further information, email us at podcast@xtalks.com.